Hello, my name is Ben Bingham. I'm the CEO and founder of 3Sisters Sustainable Management, and we are the manager of Scarab Funds, which is a set of impact funds that are pooled for investors. We also do other strategies, all 100% focused on impact and trying to make a beneficial difference for the environment and society. We're fortunate to have Dan Martell with us today. He's the CIO of public equities for 3Sisters, and he manages our global all-cap portfolio, which has been incorporating hedging techniques over the last year, which has really been beneficial. And I'd like to introduce him and ask you, Dan, to talk a little bit about your background, what kind of education you came from, and what you did since playing basketball at Harvard.
Well, I have a BA from Harvard College and MBA from Harvard Business School. When I left the business school, I really wanted to get outside of the New York circle, and so I took a job as an international grain trader, which was sort of a fascinating process. Worked in Paris and then a lot of places in the US, and really learned, my first big job was learning how to be a hedger, because the grain markets are a fully hedged market. And hedging is not a tricky device or some esoteric derivative. It really is a core way of managing risk for the agricultural community, as I first learned. And I moved on from there to the Chicago Board of Trade, where I was a floor trader and worked for a company working with clients in the grain markets. And then I decided that the opportunity lay more in New York with an up-and-coming market, which has become the crude oil and oil products market, which is a big driver of the world economy. And I did that for a number of years and decided to move on, work for a couple big banks like BNP Paribas and a Canadian bank, doing more sort of market neutral hedge type strategies. It was a style that I'd always had, and it just made sense to me to address difficult and complex markets by being someone who understood how to hedge, how to take risk on it, put it on the table and remove it, and really play the process very adeptly. So about 10 years ago, I started to realize that I didn't care for a lot of the stuff that was happening within the markets, and I began to get attuned to the social responsible market. And then I worked on that for a while. And then 4 years ago, I met Ben and decided that really the next step was to take over trading a portfolio and take all the skills and techniques that I had had from previous experiences, which were quite extensive, apply them to this new idea of trading a portfolio for me, and then to gradually bring in some of the techniques that I had been employing. And so as part of that, within the portfolio, we do a lot more hedging than we used to. We're using a lot more options, which allow for one to take a more defined and limited risk on the positions you take, really to control a lot of the risk factors. And what we've found is that's been a very successful process, is that you can't avoid tremendously down markets like the last 2 days, but it does allow you to moderate some of the risk. In addition, the next innovation was to move into a market that's it's related to the California cap and trade market. If you're not familiar with that, it's a market that's been in California for about 10 years, and they basically assess a financial penalty to companies that pollute and put carbon in the air. And there are ways for people like us to take part in that market and benefit from it. And so we are opening up a program shortly to further diversify our exposure to the public equity markets by also including this investment and activity in the California cap and trade market. So that's really been the process, is to incorporate as many techniques as we can find to allow us to control risk and minimize some of the downside exposure that the market has.
Thank you, Dan. That was great. And we'll do more of these short segments to just give you a sense of what we're doing at 3Sisters Sustainable Management and Scarab Funds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.